So in the upper right-hand corner, you should now see that it's live.
We're live. Mm-hmm.
All right, so if anybody's out there.
You're echoing.
Probably just for you. Oh, but I'll turn this other computer off.
That's better.
So if anybody's out there watching, I'd invite you to click on the question box and type in your first name, where you live, and what year in school you are.
And as Rob's doing that, I will introduce myself. My name is Carol Smoot, and I'm one of the co-founders of Forward Directions. We have a website where you can check out our full offerings and what we can do for students. It's Forward Directions, all one word, with one D joining the two words, .org. And we have, I think, probably everything you need to at least get a feeling for who we are. If you're interested at all in knowing more about us or have questions about how we can help you, on the contact page, there's a section you can fill out. It's not a commitment form in any way, shape, or form. It's just saying you want to talk and get some more information. If you go out and fill that section out and submit it, and make sure you submit it, then we'll get back to you and we can go from there. And my partner, this is a grand experiment doing this live conversation that we're doing online, is Rob Darrow. We live in two different cities, but we have lots of experience working together. We are former educators and have just finished taking all the coursework to complete our college admission counseling certificate through UC Riverside, and I'm real proud about that as well. I can see a student who's joined us.
You can. All right. Hey.
Hi, Aurora.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So what can we do to help you tonight? What's your question?
Well, my question was for the Common App, when you have to send the letters of rec, like, how do you do that? Like, do you need to submit an application to do that?
Okay. So here's how you do that. First of all, where do you live? What town do you live in?
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. Okay.
Oh, good. Were you in the class where I was in earlier?
Yeah.
All right. Good. You get the first day in that class.
Okay. So this is an easy answer. When you go into the Common application and you set up an account, that's the first thing you have to do to be able to work in the Common App. Have you done that yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you're in there, there's a section where you can send a request to what are called recommenders, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what you need to do is you send an invitation to their email address, and on their email there will be an invitation that shows up through the Common App that you have sent an invitation asking them to be your recommender. Now the hitch is, before you do that, courtesy is that you have talked to them ahead of time and ask them if they would be willing to do that. Don't send them a recommender request unless you've asked, okay? So ask them first, and then once they've okayed that, then I would recommend then you go out and you probably have a teacher, maybe the teacher in the class that you were in today when Rob was there. You might ask her and do a trial, like send it to her and then check with her the next day. Okay, did you get the invitation? If not, then obviously you didn't do something quite right, but it'll give you the opportunity to invite someone into your Common App, and then let's pretend you asked me. I've written a letter for recommendation for you, then I go in and it gives me my own special code, and then I go in and I upload the letter within Common App in your section. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you don't get a letter from them personally, although we would encourage you to get a copy of any letter as long as the person's willing to give it to you, so you have it in your own file. But they have to upload it into the Common App themselves. It's not something you can do for them.
Okay.
The other part of that is that most Common App schools want one of those recommendations to be from your counselor at school, and most counselors are very familiar with that. And then we recommend that you get a teacher that knows you, and then perhaps a third recommendation from another teacher or somebody from like a church or a club or something outside of school, kind of rounds out who you are.
Have you already asked people to be your recommenders yet? Have you asked any for any letters?
Yeah, I actually already have 2 letters of rec, like in
Oh.
hard copy.
Okay,
Oh.
so
Go ahead, Carol. Great.
where who did you ask to be your recommenders?
I asked my Spanish teacher and my English teacher.
Okay. Have you been in Avid for a while?
Yeah.
I would absolutely ask your Avid teacher. I think that would be really important. Is there any club on campus or organization, or like you've been in band or you've been in choir or you've done a bunch of volunteer work? Have you done anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay. You might consider asking some of them, and here's the deal. You could get letters of recommendations from multiple people, and then you can decide which ones are your strongest letters and therefore who you're going to ask to upload in the Common App. All of those other letters, it doesn't mean that they're worthless. They're not, because there will be other things that you will need letters of recommendation for, including like scholarships and things. But you're going to want to have at least 3, and you want to have a wide range. If you could, sounds like you could potentially have like up to 5, and that would not be a bad thing at all. The more you give them, the better. But of course, you want to pick the ones that you think are going to say positive things about you, right?
Yeah.
That answer the question?
Yes,
and
I do.
The other thing is that let me turn my name around here. There we go. That looks better. So you didn't mention your counselor that you've talked to yet, right?
No.
Okay, so you want to get a counselor, and the other thing that we recommend is that you give the people some ideas of what they talk about. So, for example, your Spanish teacher might talk about, how your academics are. Your Avid teacher might talk about how you interact with students or with each other, or your growth over the years in, being college and career ready, or something along those lines. That as you talk to the people, it's good for them to have something written. And so often we recommend that the email address they give you, that you email them asking if they would give you a recommendation. Then you put their name into the Common App, and then you email them again and say, okay, you should be getting this invitation. Here's some ideas of what you might talk about.
And just so you know, Aurora, I just stepped out of the classroom just right now, so I'm still writing letters for students that I had last year because I was a high school teacher. And the 3 things I asked them to give me so that it gives me something to talk about, I asked them to give me a copy of their transcript. Asked them to give me a copy of their resume, even if it's not a formal one, but a list of their activities and all of that kind of stuff. And then if they have anything in particular stand out from my class or anything that I need to know about them personally that might make a difference in me writing a letter, even if they just write me a couple of paragraphs. So just, does that make sense? And I give most of my students, when I was at school, would hand those to me in a hard copy. Like they'd just print them off and they'd give them to me. Now that I'm not at school, they're emailing those to me. And so that's just as effective. But you want to give them something so they don't have to go, okay, Aurora, gosh, I had her last year. Okay, so let me think. You give them something so if your transcript's right there, they go, oh, that's right, she got an A both semesters, or whatever it is. They don't have to go hunt and find it. It will make it. And the other thing, because this is the Common App and the deadline is probably for most of the schools you're applying to in late December or early January, you want them to have this done before they go to winter break. So do you have Thanksgiving week off? Do you have all next week off?
We start our week off on Wednesday.
Okay, which means none of those teachers are going to do an area council. They're going to be on vacation. So I would go talk to them this week about it, get the information to them this week, and ask them if they can get you the letter written and uploaded by like the week before school's out for winter break, which I think is something like, let me look at my calendar, I think that's probably like December 10th or something in that general region. And the reason I'm saying that is that way you can check, you'll be able to see in Common App if they've done it, and if they haven't, that'll give you like a whole week to kind of gently nudge them, bug them, because once vacation starts, you won't see them. The 11th, I would ask them to have it done by like the 10th, which is that Thursday, and then Thursday night I'd go out and I'd check, and if they don't, and if they do finish it, I would go by their classroom or your counselor's office and say, thanks so much, I saw that you did it, appreciate that kind of thing.
Yeah, that follow-up's really important in all of this stuff that Carol just mentioned. So once you see that they've submitted it, then send them a separate email and say thanks, and then if you get a copy of all those, if they're comfortable giving them to you, because those letters can become letters you can use for scholarships and other things along those lines.
Yeah.
So
okay.
which schools are you applying to for the college app?
Claremont McKenna.
Uh-huh.
And Hofstra University.
Hofstra?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What do you think you want to do, Aurora? What do you want to study, do you think?
Sociology.
Okay. Okay, I can see that. Rob and I just were down in Southern California, and we actually went onto the campus of Claremont McKenna. So we were just there in the beginning of October. It's a lovely campus. Have you been there? You have?
I haven't been there, but I have like a guest speaker that came. That she was like a student at Herbert High, and she like went there.
How about Hofstra? How do you know about Hofstra?
Well, I've just looked at online pictures, and I've gotten like emails from them, so.
Oh, so they're recruiting. They're interested in you. That's good.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, you'll have to, I know you now have a connection with Rob from him being there, so you'll have to keep us informed and let us know where you get in.
Okay.
Cool.
Rob, is it fine if I send you my personal statement?
Sure.
Sure.
Yep. That's what I said. I'd be happy to do that. If there are people, let me just jump in here and then Aurora will come back to you. If there are people watching our broadcast, click on the Q&A section in the upper right-hand corner, the little Rubik's Cube, or some people call it the waffle. Click on that and you'll see Q&A. And in the question section, give us your name, your first name, the city you're in, and your grade level, so that we know you're out there. Aurora, you're welcome to stick around with us. I've got some other questions that people emailed in, so I think I'll address a couple of those, and then Aurora will go back to you if you have other questions, or if you have to leave, that's fine too. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for everything.
All righty.
You're welcome.
Good luck.
Okay.
So Carol, we got a question in. A different student wrote in and said that they took the ACT test, and the first time they got a 27 on that test, and then they took it again and got a 26. And they're wondering how they record that on their application. What would you recommend?
I think most universities will take your best score, and so it depends on the individual application. You need to look and see if they have multiple places that you need to upload multiple tests. If they don't, then I would put in my best score and the date. But oftentimes, if you upload, let's say, an ACT set of scores, they may want all of them. I would tell you that, I mean, yes, it went down, but I wouldn't let that completely bog you down. It's 1 point. You know, that's we all know as educators that, students do better on one day than another day kind of thing. So I wouldn't let that freak you out. But I think you need to look at the actual application, and I can't give you a blanket statement because every application is a little different. So even just like, let's pretend you're looking at a California State University application versus a University of California application. Just how you even upload that information is just a hair different. But again, it's only 1 point off. I wouldn't let that throw you. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think we generally recommend that people always put their best foot forward with their best scores, and obviously when you submit those applications, you put in your College Board ID numbers, so those are sent automatically to the colleges you're applying to. But in your applications, we want to put the best foot forward. And at this point, if you're a senior, you've got everything behind you and you just want to keep moving forward. So you always want to, I'll just say it again, put your best foot forward. So that's a good question.
That's a great question.
Somebody else asked the question about when you apply to CSUs through the CSU Mentor website, does it automatically go to all the colleges? And I already responded to them that yes, it does, but it's a $55 fee per college that you apply to, but you can put everything in there at once, and once you select all those colleges and click submit, it automatically goes and bills you and all that sort of stuff.
And just so you can prove that to yourself, you can go out within that, and let's pretend you're picking Fresno State and you're picking Long Beach and you're picking Sac State. You can go out and you should be able to see within that all 3 separate applications. And it wouldn't be a bad idea, technology being what it is. I'd go out and just kind of skim to make sure that all of it naturally populated into all 3. And if you see a hole or something, you can fill that out. But each application is separate, but not really. But you do have to pay for them separately. But it's nice. It's a really convenient way to apply, having them all in one place like that. It's like the UC application, like that.
Yeah, and I think the other piece there is, and once you submit, you can't go back and submit again, right?
Nope.
So it's really important that you think about which CSUs you most want to apply to, and we talk to students about the colleges they think they're most likely to get into, and then their stretch colleges. We know from our own experiences in the CSU system, some of the schools are more difficult to get in than others, like, for example, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo or Cal Poly Pomona or San Diego State are some of the more popular CSUs out there, and so that means that more people apply. So it's important that as you do apply, you think about where you best qualify and which ones you're most likely to get into, and make sure you check all those up front. And the other thing we recommend is, so have some adult look over your shoulder and look at that application as you submit it to make sure you're doing it right as well. So.
And that can be an older brother or sister, or a mom or dad, even another friend, but having another set of eyes to proofread anytime you're doing something official, it's a good idea to have them look it through with you. It's amazing, and we all do that, where we thought we had everything perfect, and then somebody else looks at it, and sometimes even with yourself, right? You can look at your own writing, and then later you look and think, how did I miss that? So having another set of eyes is always good, and reassures you, too, that you've been thorough.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good rule of thumb for anything that you're doing that's an important application, whether it's to college or a future job or any of those types of things that you have other people. As Carol and I work together before we ever send anything out to other people, we often will have each other proofread our stuff to make sure it looks okay. So that's a good practice. And especially with something as important as college applications. Well, that was an interesting sound. I'm not sure where that came from. The other thing about the CSU applications, of course, is that you just submit your grades and your test scores and your other interests and those sorts of things. There's no essay or personal statement that's required there. And they have a formula they put that into, and that's how they send out their acceptances. The other aspects of your application are important there, like when they ask about hobbies or clubs or community service or those types of things, because that's all that the CSU system has to judge students by. Anything else on that, the CSU application you want to add, Carol?
No, I would encourage you to not just apply to one. If you can afford it, I would apply to multiple. I think it's always wise never to put all your hopes and dreams in one basket, but they always talk about not putting all your eggs in one basket. And I would encourage you in the group that you're applying to always apply to the one that's closest to where you live. You know, we never know how life works out, and I think it would be a mistake to not take the advantage of applying to the one that's closest to where you actually live, just in case you needed to drive there so that you could still go to college or whatever. You never know. And oftentimes, the college that's in our own backyard is exactly the right one for us. And I know sometimes, you know, kids always feel like I need to go away. And I would say that depends on the situation. So I would encourage you, just like I would encourage you to apply to whatever your nearby community college is. Because you never know how life happens. You never know what offers will or won't come in. You never know how money is going to come together. Just don't miss the opportunity to apply to the ones in your own backyard.
You brought up costs, and that was one of the questions that came up earlier for another student, was about if they don't have the money to pay for those applications. So through the CSU system and the UC system, if you simply Google UC application and fee waiver, they'll talk to you about what to fill out to have that fee waived. There is a income requirement, or you've got to report those as you do that. But you know, until you send that in, you don't know if it's accepted or not. And even if that first waiver doesn't go through, you can still appeal their denial, so to speak, and request it again. That you can do that in writing, or you can do that online as well. The other thing that's come up with some students that I've worked with are students that are undocumented or who are not yet citizens of the United States or of California. And there's, through the CSU system and the University of California, there's a place in those applications to bring that to their attention as well, so they know that the kind of category that you fit into and what you're doing at this point in time. You know, we're here like so many educators in California and throughout the United States because we want to support a number of students in helping them to get into college, because we know that by going to college, it increases our economy, it increases your ability to get the kinds of jobs that you want. And so that's really why we're here tonight, is to help everybody do what they want to do.
Do you have any other questions that have come in?
I don't have any other questions. I was looking, after I talked to a number of students who are not citizens of the US, I went out and looked about the application process, and that's quite the lengthy application process. And if you're under 18, there's a different process than if you're over 18. But just like so many things in life, there's a whole separate bureaucracy in way you do that.
Yep. But it's worth checking out because there are opportunities there, particularly if you're in the state of California, for people in all income brackets, all backgrounds, all situations. And so don't rule college out just because it may seem out of reach. There are lots of opportunities. And again, some of those are in our own backyard, including at community colleges.
So there, I learned that there's a website called California Dream Act out there, and students, for California universities, you go and fill out the California Dream Act application, much like you do the federal financial aid documents. So, except there's one just for California, especially for students who are not yet citizens of the United States, specifically in California. And I hadn't learned much about that until earlier today when I kind of checked it out. So it's a separate process, and that's due by March of every year, which I don't know that that's much different than the federal financial aid document, that timeline's kind of the same.
That's about the same. Speaking of that, maybe we should talk about that for a minute. Anybody who's going to go to college, no matter what your financial situation is, you need to fill out what's called the FAFSA, which is capital FAFSA. And you can find that online. I think it's FAFSA.gov. And there's all sorts of information out there. But one of the things that you can be doing now is to be able to register. And again, if you're going to go to college, you need to do this. You need to go out and get what's called an FSA ID, an identification number. And you have to get it, and your parents have to get one. And it's a different number for both of you. They've changed a little bit. Even if you have older brothers and sisters and thought you know how to do it in the past, it's a little bit different this year. So I would encourage you to go out and check that website out. And it tells you really directly what you need to do, what kind of things you need to be able to fill out the forms. If you are one of the students in the AVID program that Rob came and talked to today, I'm sure your Avid teacher can talk through a lot of that with you. Don't be afraid to ask questions to get some help with that. You can fill it out as early as January 1st, and the earlier you do it, the better it is. There are more opportunities because the money's not spoken of at the different schools. But right now, within this next 2-month period here, as we move towards January 1st, you need to go out and get your ID, and you need to have your parents get their ID. And I wouldn't wait to do that. You know how technology is sometimes. It gets a little glitchy, and you don't want to be like trying to do that on the same day that you're trying to upload. So get that ID thing now. Go out and explore that website. Read what it says, and it will really be, I think, of help to you.
Yeah, and what I learned today is that the California DREAM Act application is very similar to that. So it does require ID and some verification by somebody how long you've been in California and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to help students to get to college and to be successful in college. It's
Rob,
just
you want
a
to
matter
remind
of knowing
people
how.
if they're just tuning in? I know some people may have popped in at an 8:30 hour. We've already met with several students and answered multiple questions, but if you're just tuning in, Rob's going to talk to you a little bit about how you can give us your questions so we know that you're there and that we can specifically answer any question you have.
Yeah, so I see we've got a couple of viewers out there. If you click on the little rubrics cube in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see an opportunity to click on where it says Q&A. If you click on Q&A and then just give us your first name, the city you live in, and your grade level, then that lets us know who's out there. And then, of course, if you have a specific question, you can use that same device to ask your question.
And we're willing to field any question as long as it's a college-related, college application, that kind of thing, kind of question. We're willing to take it.
And if we don't know the answer, we'll get it for you.
That's right. We don't pretend that we know absolutely everything. So I know a lot of you are probably maybe stressing a little bit about your UC application if you're applying to the UC system. Just to make sure you're aware, your deadline for that application is in just over a week or so. I guess it's actually about 2 weeks. It's November 30th, which is 2 weeks from tonight. And
Yep.
We would not only encourage you to get that done in a timely manner, but I would encourage you not to wait until November 30th to be uploading it again. Oftentimes, because of the internet, they can get overloaded, etc. And there's an actual, like a time deadline. And if you're not uploaded on time, it's an issue. So we'd encourage you to be uploading at the very latest, like that Saturday or Sunday before, and that's even pushing it. You can do it before that. That would be really good. We also know that you have a couple of essays that you need to be writing. Just want to remind you that there's a word count on those. You can only use up to 1,000 words for both essays together. And one of the things that we know about successful essays for the UC system, a couple of things. Number one is make sure you answer the prompt, and that's actually true in any university application. Make sure that you're answering the prompt. When you think you're done, go back and look at the prompt again and then look at what you wrote and make sure, did you actually respond to that prompt? The UC application essays are a little bit different than the Common App application essays in that the UC essays, they want you to be real direct. They don't want flowery language. They don't want you to feel like you have to put in a bunch of adjectives and adverbs. They want you just to talk to them. They want to know who you are. And so I would encourage you to write in a very straightforward style. The Common App, you've got a little bit more flexibility. And there are lots of people who get pretty creative in their approach to that. But you need to know that a straightforward approach works there as well. So that one, you have a little bit more room to express yourself maybe in a style that feels, that you want to play with a little bit. But again, a UC one, the first one's here that is a deadline. You want to make sure you're on top of it and not make sure that you're talking directly to the people who are going to read in your application. You might be encouraged too that I've talked to some UC admissions officers, specifically I've talked personally to the ones at UC Santa Barbara, and they assured me that your application gets read not by one person, but by two people. They actually really read it, and one person reads it, and then it gets handed to a completely separate reader, and they read it, and then there's a collaboration. But they really read everything you take the time to fill out. So when you think, is anybody even going to read this? Because I know sometimes students feel like, does my teacher even read this? They're actually going to read it. So be encouraged. It's worth putting the time in. And those essays make a huge, huge difference because it's your real opportunity to talk about who you are and showcase yourself.
And the other thing to know about the CSU and the UC application, as well as the college Common App for that matter, is that you go in and you create your own account, and there are about 8 different screens that need basic information. And you can go, that part's pretty easy, you know, like your name, your address, what school you went to, all those kinds of things. And it also asks for your grades that you've had through your high school career from 9th grade on. So you want a copy of your transcript or know what your grades have been, so you can put all of that in as well. But all that stuff is pretty easy to get in. So if you're applying to the University of California, the writing of the essays may take a little more time, but the other stuff is pretty basic information. The clubs you've been in, the sports you've been in, volunteer hours you've put in, different activities. With each one of those things, they ask for awards. They let you put in up to 5 different awards, 5 different volunteer type activities, 5 different types of clubs or sports you've been involved in. So all of those things can be done pretty easily without too much thinking, as long as you've got the information in front of you.
The other thing is, it's not like you're expected to be a braggart, but it's not a good idea to be shy about what your accomplishments are. It's an opportunity for you to share all the positive things you've done. And if you look at it as, I'm just letting them know who I am. Remember, they don't know you at all. It's just what they read on those pieces of paper that they print out that are the result of your application. So it really matters that you take the time to share with them so they can see what you've done, what you've accomplished. They want to see your strengths. So don't be afraid to share those with them. And they will, if they need. That one thing about the UC application, if there's something that they don't see and they're a little like they're not sure about something, they'll contact you. And they might even ask you for an additional essay to talk about something, or they might contact you and ask for a person that could be a recommender for you, and send. They would, you know, who could they ask, and then they would contact that person, who would then submit a letter of recommendation on your behalf, kind of thing. So there may be a second stage to the UC application, and if that happens, if you get contacted in, I don't know, January, February, March, and they want more information, don't think, oh, that means that's a bad thing. It means that's a good thing, because that means they're interested enough in you to ask for further information. So that should be an encouragement to you. It's not a promise that you're going to get into that particular UC. Just so you know too, the UCs have, all of them have 9 components that they consider when they're looking at your application. But each UC, because it's its own unique campus, kind of reorders those 9 things in their own priority list. And so you may think, well, how come, like, I got into UC Santa Barbara, but I didn't get into UC Irvine? It's because each one of those campuses, although they're still looking at those same 9 components, may be looking at them, they might prioritize, they think, you know, number 7 is most important and number 5 is the next most important. And so how you fit with that may be different at UC Irvine than it is a little bit with, let's say, UC Santa Barbara or UC Davis or whatever. So that's why you might get into one and not into another.
So we're at about 20 minutes before the hour. So I think let's just pause a minute and kind of recap some of the questions and answers we've talked about. So one student came in and asked about the Common application and how you do recommendations there. And our recommendation about those recommendations is that you talk to those people ahead of time. You email them after you've put their information into the Common App. Know that the Common App system will email those people directly, and they'll upload their letters of recommendation for you. we suggest that you ask those people to also send a copy of that letter to you. You can go into your own Common App application area, and you'll know when those letters have been submitted. And when you see that the people who you've asked to submit those letters have done so, then email them and thank them for doing so, that you recognize that they've done that for you. Most schools that request letters of recommendation expect that one of those letters is from your school counselor. That's part of one of their many jobs, many hats they wear, and then other people along those lines. So that's about the Common App. We had another question about, what was the question about? When you apply to CSU, do you apply to all the CSU colleges? The answer is yes, you can apply to each one of them. It's important that you make sure you check those colleges that you're applying to. And each application is about $55 a piece. So if you apply to 4 of those, that's 4 times 55.
I thought of one thing we might want to add there to that student question. There are a couple of applications that require some information, like they have 1 or 2 extra questions, and that's why you really need to look at each individual college's application. Even though you've entered all the information and it populates that information into all of the different applications at the same time, you should look, because like I know, for instance, at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, there's at least 1, if not 2, extra questions that they require you to respond to. And so you don't want to leave something undone. If you submit an application and you have something missing, they just assume that it means you didn't complete your application, even if it's just 1 thing. And so you don't want to miss out on an opportunity to have them consider you and take you seriously because you left a stone unturned, because you left something blank. That speaks to your thoroughness and how serious you are about applying to the college. Go ahead, Rob.
The other question somebody asked was, so what if you take the ACT test twice and your better score is the first time you take the test and the second time your score is a little lower? And that would be the same thing with the SAT test, is that we recommend that you put your best foot forward and you put in the scores that are your best scores. Each university automatically gets your test scores and the number of times you've taken that test. So just know that that information is already out there. And so those have been our main questions, the main things we've talked about tonight so far, and we're hanging out here for another about 15 minutes. See if there's any other questions.
If you're out there watching, don't be afraid to put your name and the city and what grade you're in. And we know a lot of you are probably seniors, and go ahead and type your question in. If nothing else, we want to be able to answer what your concerns might be. So again, if you just type that question in and submit it, then we know how to respond.
Oh, that reminds me, the other thing that we've both talked a lot about is, so the deadline for the University of California and CSU applications is midnight on November 30th. But you do not want to be one of those students that's submitting at 11:59 on November 30th. You want to get that in as soon as you can. And the students we work with, their applications are going to be done before Thanksgiving so that they can enjoy that Thanksgiving break and not worry about submitting applications. At the very least, you should be going in and getting most of those applications filled in, and then perhaps over Thanksgiving, it's a good time to have another adult look over your shoulder as you finish those up and submit them. But get those submitted, several days, and ideally a week before the 30th. We talked that the deadline for those is exactly 2 weeks from tonight for all those applications, and get them in early. The other thing that's important to realize is that if you don't apply, you can't get accepted. It's that simple. So if you're thinking a 4-year college is something you may be interested in doing, then send in the application. And if cost is an issue, there's waivers you can fill out. You can still submit your application and not pay the fee, and they'll still receive it and look at it somewhat. And then you can work out the financing of how you pay for that at a later date if you need to.
Yep. At the same time, know that most state colleges in any state are due at the end of November, beginning of December. It's usually November 30th or December 1st. It's private colleges that tend to have their applications due in either the middle of December, the end of December, or the beginning of January. So if you're going to apply, let's say, to the University of Washington, as an example, it's going to be due at the same time as the University of California. So don't get blindsided just thinking, well, if I live in California, because we know a lot of you potentially would be in California listening to this, that, you know, if I got my stuff into then I'll worry about the other ones. You need to really be keeping track of when the deadlines are for all these different colleges, because if the deadline comes and goes, you've missed it. So don't miss that opportunity. At the same time, know that a lot of applications have some crossover. So I'm making this up, but let's pretend you wanted to apply to a state school in Idaho and you had written a UC essay. It's possible, depending on the prompt that you responded to, or how there may be a similar prompt on the University of Idaho or Idaho State application than there is on maybe on one of the UCs, or maybe on one of the ones on your Common App that you've been working on. So that's not saying you might not have to tweak it some to fit, to be a custom fit, but it's possible. So that will save you some time, but don't miss. In fact, if you haven't already done that and you have a list of the schools you want to apply to, I would encourage you to like maybe tonight write down the name of those schools, and then when that application deadline is, and then maybe number them based on that so you don't lose track. Another thing I was going to say, I had something brilliant to share and I just have lost it.
Well, you'll get it back. I was thinking about how those of us who live in California, we're very fortunate in California that there's a range of colleges in California, and depending on where you live, there's a state university or University of California not too far from you, relatively speaking, and then there's community colleges in every community. So even if you apply to a four-year college and don't get in, there are great community colleges in every community nearby those schools. So I'll just take an example. So let's say San Luis Obispo County, there's Cuesta Community College there, and then Cal Poly is right near there. There's not really a University of California right near there, but I guess people there might come to UC Santa Cruz or someplace like that, or go into UC Merced or down south to like UCLA or UC Irvine. But know that if you do go the community college route, that those courses that you take, you want to make sure those are aligned with the University of California or the CSU that you want to get into, because California universities have made a promise to you that if you do well in community college, you're guaranteed to get into a CSU or the UC that you want to get into. It may not be the exact one you want to get into, but they guarantee that you'll get into their system if you do well at the community college level. So just know there's many opportunities to be successful.
I still can't remember what I was going to transition to, but since you're talking about community college, I think a lot of times students, one of two things happens. They either think, oh, community college, you know, that doesn't really count. And Rob and I would both tell you they absolutely count. And in at many instances, it's the very best place for you to be, especially if you have no idea what you want to do. You have an opportunity at much less cost to be able to take a variety of classes. Many community colleges have really excellent honors courses, so even if you're a really top student and think, well, I want to be in a challenging strand, those are opportunities at community colleges. There are top quality professors at there, and again, they're really a good launching place from there to go on. So it's not like if you go there, then you're not going to have an opportunity to go away. The other thing I would tell you is, Rob mentioned this, nobody says that if you go to your local community college that you can't go away, so to speak. You could go live in an apartment with some friends or something. Some community colleges, as an example, Reedley College, which is in Reedley in Central California, they actually have some dorms. So those opportunities are still there. So don't rule those out. And from a financial perspective, community colleges are very viable and very accessible. And I know a lot of students in today's economy who feel like I don't want to end up with lots of loans. I don't know how to pay the bills. Community college, look at your community colleges near you. You may be even in a position where there will be multiple community colleges in your surrounding area. I happen to live in Fresno, and just within my immediate area, there are 3 that are within easy reach. And each one of them obviously has, they're all good at everything, so to speak, but they also have certain strengths, and you could kind of steer yourself to one or the other depending on their programs. The other thing that you should make sure you do is apply to them. In the old days, when Rob and I were going to college, pretty much if you just wanted to go to community college, you could go to community college. You didn't have to register way ahead of time. But there are actual deadlines now for registering for community colleges because it's such a viable option. Don't miss that opportunity. Your counseling office at your school will be able to tell you when that happens. But don't miss that and just think, well, I'll just go to that community college, that's 3 miles from here, and think you'll just show up and have a position. It doesn't work like that anymore. So make sure that you actually do apply so you don't miss the opportunity. And again, I would encourage you to apply, no matter where you apply to your local Cal State if you live in California, and no matter where you live, apply to your local community college. The other thing I was going to say is if you live in the western part of the United States, and I know most people tonight listening to us would because we're on Pacific Standard Time, otherwise it's pretty late on the East Coast, don't be afraid to look at some of the colleges in neighboring states. Some of the schools work together to make themselves more affordable. For example, the University of Nevada, Reno has a program called the Western Regional Program, and they give, if you're coming from California, you can apply there, and you don't have to, you have to pay a little bit more than what it would cost you as if you were from Nevada, but it's way cheaper than an out-of-state fee because you're from a neighboring state. So you might look at that in some of the neighboring states. Not every neighboring state does that, but I know, for instance, Nevada does that. And so don't miss the opportunity to see if they're part of that Western regional group that gives a discount.
Yeah, the other advantage of community colleges is that I'm now echoing, but oh, there it stopped finally. Okay, is that, if you stay at home and go to community college, it's also an opportunity to get a job where you could earn some money, and then some of that money could be saved up for when you maybe go away to a 4-year college. But I want to echo what Carol said, and that is, if part of your goal, or you believe the right fit for you, is to move away from home to have that college experience, any community college around the state of California can work out. I happen to know that in San Luis Obispo, there are a number of students that go to Cuesta Community College in San Luis Obispo and then matriculate easy to Cal Poly. And then there are, down in the San Diego area, a number of community colleges there. A number of students go to community college, go right into San Diego State or into UC San Diego, that they work together to help students be able to do that. Of course, they also expect students to get good grades in their community college courses before they transfer to one of the 4-year colleges, but those opportunities are out there. And again, like I said earlier, it's one of the promises of California higher education colleges to every student in the state of California to figure out a way to help you to do that. So that's another great reason to live in California with our great education system here.
Something else that we might mention, since we've been talking community college and state schools, is maybe talk for just a second about public schools or private schools. And
good point.
Private colleges have, you may think a private college is out of reach in terms of expense. I certainly felt like that when I was going to college. And what we have learned is that often private schools are more expensive, certainly when you look at their tuition, and you have to take that into account, obviously, because there are bills to pay to go to college. It's not free. But you need to know that a lot of private colleges have more money in terms of grants and some of that kind of money that they can come. Hi, Giselle. And that they often have money available for scholarships and student support that public universities don't have. So don't necessarily take them off the plate just because they look expensive. It's worth exploring what their financial aid department could do for you. So, hi Giselle, where are you from?
I'm from Santa Cruz.
You're from Santa Cruz. Were you in the class Robinson today?
That Daryl went to talk to today.
Great.
Cool.
Well, welcome, welcome. You jumped in just in the nick of time. We've got about 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have
are you
any
a
burning
senior?
questions?
Yeah, so how important are senior grades?
Very. All of your grades are important from your freshman year all the way up. And I think sometimes seniors who get senioritis, right, who are a little burned out and think, oh, it doesn't really matter. I think even then, even if they're serious, they think, okay, but beyond the first semester, it's not really going to matter. When you apply to a college, they expect that at the end of the first semester that your grades get sent in, okay, to their college because they want to see them. But you also need to know that they will monitor your scores at the end of the year. They will actually require you to send your second semester grades to them. So let's pretend you've applied and you got into the college of your choice and you're all excited, and then in June you send them your transcript. Could they bump you if you really derailed? The answer is they could, depending on the college. I know a young man who had gotten into Stanford on early admission, so way, way early. He got told like in the beginning of December, and he was all excited, and he took some very tough coursework, and he wasn't slacking or anything. It wasn't senioritis, but his grades weren't quite as strong that first semester of his senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Stanford contacted him right after those grades got submitted and wanted to talk about that. And they assigned him a person who was going to track his grades and wanted to make sure that it wasn't because he was slacking, that kind of thing. And I remember writing him an additional letter of recommendation that got submitted, and I was teaching sophomores at that time, so he had to get multiple people to write letters, and this person at Stanford monitored him, and they told him, depending on what happens here, you could lose your spot. So I think a lot of times, again, students think, it doesn't matter. It matters. Now, do I think that the average college just goes through and randomly pulls people out? No, but I do know people who have derailed on their grades, and that, let's say you're a really good student and all of a sudden you kind of tank because it's your senior year and I'm just sort of tired and I've got other things to do, and I was doing all this application stuff, I didn't have time to study. I do know some students who have lost their positions at the colleges they wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. So it's not a frequent thing, but it can happen. So
the important thing, the other part of that to know is that as you apply to your colleges, they consider your grades through your junior year. They don't look at your senior grades except what you submit to them. And right. After they choose to accept you, then you're going to submit your official transcripts. And if your grades are still pretty much the same as they've always been, then that's right. Fine as well. So that's...
I was going to say what they're worried about, I think, is oftentimes, and maybe that's what you're asking us, is sometimes people have, they've been real consistent, and then, I don't know, you're just tired, and you just kind of start to play a little bit your senior year and think it really doesn't matter. And I think what ends up happening is you can derail, and that's a problem. And so part of that's a work ethic thing. They want to know who you are, and if you're trying to make a good impression, it's like you're trying to be hired for a job, right? You're looking for a position at their company. And so I would never slack off at my current job if I was applying for a position at this job. That's just a work ethic thing. So I encourage you not to lose track of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing so, but I just want to, I've heard from people that,
yeah, it doesn't matter.
I didn't know how real it is, or I just had the question. No, I've been strong.
Yeah, it's real.
And with my extracurriculars, but I just wanted to know.
Especially the first semester of your senior year if they accept you, they're really looking at those. So we've got another viewer, and I don't even know how to say your name out there. I'm going to call you Kama, or I don't even know. Maybe Giselle, you know who this person is. I don't. I know. Yeah.
Maybe.
Anyway, and I don't know if it's a he or she, but they ask, at the end of the college app, when it says would you like to add anything else to it, should you put anything there? And I would say it all depends on who you are and what important things have happened to you or not happened to you. If everything's, pretty much, the way, most of our lives is really normal lives and that sort of thing, there probably wouldn't be anything interesting to put there at the end. On the other hand, it's an opportunity to bring in some maybe unique aspect. We were talking to another student earlier, and Carol was talking about, if, let's say your mom had a serious medical condition in your sophomore year in high school, and that became an impact for some of your grades, that might be something to talk about. If you're maybe if you're not yet a citizen of the United States, you could put in there how you're in the process of becoming a citizen and why that's important to you. It just kind of depends.
It can
Go
even
ahead,
be
Carol.
something, it's an opportunity for you to share something that you didn't get to share within the essays or within the short answer sections for a given college. And so if there's anything at all that you think you could use that space for, I would encourage you to use it. I wouldn't just write something to write something, but it can even be something, so it's an opportunity for you to talk directly to the admission reader. So for instance, let's pretend that you have really good grades, but your test scores aren't so good, and maybe you actually have an explanation for why that is. That would be a good place to explain that. Or maybe you might have a situation where you took the SAT and you weren't prepared because your parents just told you that they were getting divorced or something like that. If there's something that you feel like needs an explanation and you haven't had any other opportunity to explain it, I would use that opportunity there. If you really don't have anything to say, though, that kind of is silly too, to just write something to write something. But again, it's an opportunity. And so we would encourage you to not miss the opportunity if there's something at all that you have to share. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and earlier we talked about that, your college application is your chance to brag a bit about who you are. Now, you don't want to overly brag, but you want to brag a little bit about the things you've been involved in and how they've impacted your life and how you're looking forward to attending college at their particular college. So you want to think about how you shine. And of course, that's more on the University of California and the Common App that you'll get that opportunity. The CSU application, there aren't that many opportunities to really say too much on there, except for your grades and your test scores. So
on the college app too, be careful that you aren't college specific on the general college app part of things, because every college sees all of that. If it's something within a specific college, so let's say you're applying to, somebody early was saying that they were applying to Claremont McKenna. So if you're applying to them, they may have some specific things within just Claremont McKenna that you respond to that everybody else at every other college can't see. But the section that you're referring to, I think, on the college app that says something,
keep it general, right?
But I wouldn't say something specific about a specific college, because all of the colleges that you're applying to on the Common App would see.
So we've got about 1 more minute. So let me ask Giselle, since you're here, and whoever, Granados on the other who's listening in.
Oh, Granados, is that Kamotsley?
Yep.
Kamotsley, yep, that's who it was. So I meant to ask the class this question earlier, and I didn't. Carol and I went back and forth about the right time to do this in an evening. Was it 8 o'clock better, or is 9 o'clock? What's interesting to me is we got one person at the very beginning, not many people in the middle, and then 2 or 3 at the end. Is later in the evening better, do you think, Giselle, than earlier? Or
would even earlier be better? Like, would it be better if we were doing this at 5 or at 7, or what do you think?
I think maybe around like a 7 would be like a average type of good time.
Okay. So a little bit earlier would have been okay too, huh?
Yeah.
And you know what? You could do us a favor and kind of chat with your classmates at school and tell them tomorrow that you did this and what you learned maybe. And there's several other people from your class who have been involved. And you could just sort of talk. And if you guys, have some feedback for something like that, I know Rob probably left his email with you. shoot an email and from the class even that just says, we were talking about the timing, and we're open to listen because we don't know how often we would do this, but if we do it in the future, we want to do it at a time when it's really beneficial to students. And we knew by starting at 8 on the West Coast that we're leaving everybody else out on the East Coast. If we start at 7, then that would be 10 o'clock at night for the East Coast, but we might catch some people. It'd be 9 o'clock in the middle part of the United States. So, but we're delighted to use the time.
Yeah, Giselle, are there any other questions or thoughts you have at this point?
I have one quick question.
Okay,
So I
sure.
know that SATs are a big part of the college application.
Yep.
But I know that like if you're a well-rounded student, there's other parts that they look at in the application.
Absolutely.
So how important is the SAT? Because I know that your personal statement, as well as your extracurriculars and honors and your involvements, also kind of give the admissions a feel of who you are as a person, and not just academically. So how important are the SAT scores for like an admissions team who is looking at your application with a holistic view?
I think that depends on the university. I think there are some universities that look pretty much at the statistics of the student to make the decision, and that's just being honest. But I also know that they look at that well-roundedness, and so they wouldn't just. So I don't know if I'm hearing the question really within the question was, what if I didn't do well on the SAT and it's not looking like those are stupendous scores, but I've got all this other really good stuff. Don't be discouraged because all that other stuff really will matter. It's not going to bounce you out of. It's not going to bounce you out of getting into college. Period. And one thing you need to know is there are lots and lots of outstanding colleges. There might be one in your head that you think, oh, I have to go there. But we would tell you, you know what, there are lots and lots of places to go that are going to be really good for you. So don't be frustrated, and don't put don't like apply just to one place or just 2 places. Apply to multiple places so that you hopefully will then end up with multiple options, because just percentage-wise, right, we think probably you won't get in everywhere, but you're going to get in some places. But they are going to care about you as a person, so don't worry. And if you've spent your whole high school, doing volunteer work and all these activities, and I've got good grades, is that going to still help? Or will it still matter? The answer is yes. It still will matter. And yes, the right college will see that and see through that, and it won't be the SAT that's the driver. Will they look at the SAT? Yeah. But again, it's going to depend on what they're looking for in terms of how they build their classes. But don't be discouraged by that. You just throw everything out there and you see where it lands. It'll be okay. I promise. It'll be okay.
Carol, you were saying earlier that there are not like 9 different sections that the University of California looks at. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that with the CSU, that's a similar process, but probably not as many sections they look at.
Not as many sections, correct.
Right. Okay. So that's the well-rounded part, Giselle. And at this point, that's all you can do is you just put your best foot forward with the strengths that you have, and let them know why you think you fit into their college system, and hopefully they'll have a place for you.
What that really means, Giselle, is don't miss the opportunity on those essays. Don't miss the opportunity through those extra opportunities to write anything else. Really, every little section where you have a little part where you can fill out and explain what that activity was. Really think what you're saying. Your thought process will come through in your writing. And that's really going to matter to the admissions people, whether it be UC system or a private college. So it's worth your time putting into those applications. So it sounds like you've done all the right things all along the way. Don't let the test scores. And you're right. Rob and I are both past teachers. We get, their test scores are test scores, and we can look at them that way. But the reality is, do they look at them as a measure? Yep. Is it the only measure? No. So you're going to be all right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think we're going to bring tonight to a close, and just to let everybody know, for the sake of the recording, that this is Rob Darrow and Carol Smoot from Forward Directions, forwarddirections.org. We have a network of students that we work with to help them get into college, and our passion is working with students on college and career and where they want to go, and you can check more information out on our website. Any final comments from you, Carol?
No, just want to thank all the students who took the time tonight to either come on live, like Giselle, Thank you for taking the time to do that, but we also want to thank the students who took the time to send us a question, to give us an opportunity to answer that. We hope that we were helpful, and we wish you all luck in the process as you move forward through the next month and a half here as all the deadlines come up to you. We know that you're going to do as well as you can possibly do. We hope we've been of help to you.